Bloodborne is easily the best Fromsoftware game ever made. From the gothic designs of the world, to its engaging and intriguing characters and lore, and by God, the trick weapons are absolutely incredible, setting it apart from any other Fromsoftware game. So tell me, how did Lies of P, a Souls-like from a no-name studio, end up giving Fromsoftware, one of the biggest AAA studios to date, a run for its money? Now, anytime a new Souls-like comes out, the critical and player reception is always pretty similar. Basically, they boil it down to, it's just a Fromsoftware copy. Nice try, and my favorite, it's too clunky. Now to be fair, they're not too far off a lot of the time. These titles usually have a lot of new ideas, but somehow never capture that feeling that Fromsoftware games can provide. But Lies of P is receiving that same critical reception, and I feel like I'm going insane, because this game is genuinely exceptional, to the point where I'm convinced if these guys slapped the Fromsoftware name on the cover, this would have received roaring praise and we would have seen tens across the board. Now don't get anything I'm saying twisted. I don't think these guys are putting Fromsoftware out of business, and they're not actually being dethroned, but I do believe they deserve praise and recognition. For years, everyone has clowned anybody who has attempted to replicate this formula, and have convinced everyone it's impossible and only doable by Fromsoftware. But NeoWiz in Round 8 proved not only is this possible, they could somehow make parts of this formula even better. Now, Lies of P is similar to most Fromsoftware games. It has a great narrative, a deeply rich world full of a wide variety of characters and enemy designs, and amazing boss battles that can almost guarantee a broken controller. But I think just calling this another Souls-like or just a Bloodborne clone is almost disrespectful. Now, Lies of P and Bloodborne are similar in a lot of aspects. There is no denying this. The world in both games, for example, are extremely gothic, dark, and very linear. And when starting Lies of P, things are going to feel very familiar. You are awoken in an unknown area with nothing but your fists, choosing between 3 starting weapons and you will be on your way. You will dodge and roll through a variety of small and big enemies until you ultimately reach the boss. These are all necessary things in these types of games that even the weakest of Souls-likes will provide. But what makes Lies of P different? How does it stand out? Well, first off, we have many people have come to know and love Fromsoftware stories, not being direct or in your face, but rather lore-driven and learning from things happening around you. Lies of P is absolutely more direct in its storytelling, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I really liked it. Ever since this game was announced, the idea was so intriguing. But this even goes a step further and turns the tale of Pinocchio on its head. What if lying made you more human-like and allowed you to break free from the strings of being just a puppet? I found myself genuinely invested in the story and characters towards the end of the game. I thought the voice acting was great in most cases, and I loved everything this world had to offer. I'm not saying that the story is overall better than Bloodborne, but I do like this approach far more. But while story and lore are essential to the Souls experience, we all know why we're here, and that's having a good combat system in these types of games is essential and will make or break the entire experience. Bloodborne took the world by storm back in 2015, and a big reason was due to the trick weapons. We had never seen anything like this before in the Dark Souls series and provided so many new layers to combat, all while looking incredibly stylish. As much as I love their recent titles like Elden Ring and Sekiro, I have longed for something even remotely similar to the trick weapons to enhance combat more than just dodge and roll, hit, repeat. Lies of P does quite a bit to enhance this formula. There is a wide variety of weapons at your disposal. There are 39 base weapons and 11 special weapons, all with light and heavy attacks. But what's different here is that every weapon has 2 unique Fable arts. After doing enough damage and parrying, you will build up your meter to perform these arts and unleash massive damage. How about a scythe which acts like a whip? A sword that breaks into 2? What about an umbrella that doubles as a sword? And that's just the basic attacks. Lies of P has an incredibly cool mechanic I believe has been massively overlooked, which is the disassembly and assembly of different weapons and handles. Every basic weapon has its own blade and handle. You are able to mix and match different handles with other blades. For example, I got this booster glaive early on which allowed me to charge up a fire attack and lunge forward. But I didn't love the entirety of the weapon itself. I found it to be very slow and it just really wasn't my thing. So I put that booster glaive on a normal sword which was able to perform quicker attacks and still have that charge ability. And what's even more unique is that this fixes a problem a lot of people have with Fromsoftware games. games. Most of the time, you hardly ever change weapons because you have already got yours to a +10, so why bother starting over? But in Lies of P, your base blade will keep that same level. So if you come across a better handle later in the game, it will feel like a new weapon with the same stats or sometimes even better. Then there's the Legion arms. These arms can range from shooting fire, bullets, planting bombs, shooting electricity, a shield, and even a grappling hook. All of these have multiple upgrades for you to get, and combining this with the Fable arts and different weapon variety adds so many layers to combat. And on top of all of that, they've included a parry system that will feel very similar to Sekiro. I don't think it's quite as polished as that, but I do think it's really good here, especially if you can master it. Just holding down the block will reduce incoming damage, and with a perfectly timed block, you will take no damage. And what I think that is really cool here is that with enough perfectly timed parries, the enemy's weapon will actually break, and it will cause them to do less damage and reduce their reach. And this feature even applies to boss battles. Unlike Bloodborne, I found myself constantly needing to switch weapons, Legion arms, and adjust my playstyle just to tackle what was ahead of me. I've seen a lot of people complain about this, and it honestly makes no sense to me. In most Fromsoftware games, I feel like many people put themselves in a box. They pick one playstyle for an entire game and rinse and repeat the same 3 moves over and over again. So I liked how this provided a layer of challenge and difficulty I haven't felt from one of these titles in a long time, which brings me to Bloodborne was my first experience with a Souls game ever, and that rocked me to my core. I could not fathom a game ever being harder than that, and so believe me when I say I promise Lies of P is harder. Now to me personally, this isn't quite Sekiro hard, but it's dang close. Enemy movements are sporadic and unpredictable. Stagger windows are short, and loads of these bosses have 2 full phases, each with their own health bar. I found myself constantly dying, but never did I think this was due to a poor game design. It was almost always entirely my fault, and I always saw where I could learn from my mistakes. I've seen so many people complain about this, calling the design bad, saying it's clunky due to the nature, and I could not disagree more. Like I said earlier, this game urges you to mix and match your playstyle and challenges you to look at things from a different perspective. To quote an excellent video from Iron Pineapple, I think most people are struggling with this game because they want to try and play this like Elden Ring or Bloodborne. And you should do neither of those things. You need to play this like Lies of P. This game is insanely challenging but rewarding. I think both Bloodborne and Lies of P manage difficulty very well in different ways, but Lies of P is absolutely harder. And that is mainly due Bloodborne has some of the best bosses I have fought in the last 10 years, and the DLC bosses are some of my all-time favorites. From the absolute incredible design to the insane number of movesets and phenomenal soundtrack drowning out everything, Fromsoftware is a masterclass in designing incredible boss battles that will resonate for years to come. While I do think Bloodborne has consistently better bosses, I think the highs in Lies of P are even better than Bloodborne. For example, the King of Puppets boss in Lies of P was one of the most memorable bosses I have fought in years. From the start, I was on the edge of my seat. Such a gorgeous looking boss with so many details and movesets. The backdrop, scenery, and music all felt like a masterful ballet that I was learning the moves to as I went along. It was difficult but fair, offering a great sense of accomplishment, and after spending so much time perfecting the boss, I unleashed my final blow only to reveal a second phase, and this is where it goes insane. The complete opposite, going from a giant monster to a human-sized puppet in an instant. Attacks went from heavy to light and nimble, but still dealing massive damage. The music was incredible, and I was having the time of my life for the first few tries. F me, come on, God! Oh. Then the pain settled in. I started to question the validity of the boss and wonder how this was even manageable. He would light up his weapon on fire and never let up on the heat. I was frustrated, but could not help but be impressed with everything that was on display. And that's just one boss. There are many in here that have such incredible designs, set pieces, movesets. Some are unique puppets, and others are just straight up monstrous creatures. And by God, the music behind these is immaculate. It cannot be understated how incredible some of these bosses are. Seriously. Many of these go beyond the generic Souls-like and are worthy of the Fromsoftware name. But let me reiterate, this game can get crazy difficult, especially towards the end game. I'll try to refrain from showing any footage from the final 3 bosses for spoiler reasons, but trust me when I say these 3 are some of the hardest I have fought in years. I do believe there is a slight problem regarding difficulty spike, but I genuinely don't believe these are unfair. I think a lot of people are going to give up towards the end of the game if they are not willing to be patient. This game will demand a lot from you. to the point where I'm sure some Souls veterans will give up because they are not willing to meet this game where it's at. But if you're willing to be persistent, not give up, and learn to adapt, I promise you will have one of the best gaming experiences of 2023. I already knew I was going to like Lies of P, but I had no idea how much I was going to love it. If you told me Lies of P was developed by Fromsoftware, I promise I would believe you. The game really is that good. Since the initial announcement, the comparisons to Bloodborne have been non-stop, and I think that needs to end. FromSoftware is undoubtedly the king of this formula, but this is easily the best Souls-like of all time, and does a lot of things genuinely better than even FromSoftware themselves. And I promise I do not say that lightly. Bloodborne is literally in my top 10 games of all time, and I have platinumed almost every FromSoftware game to date. The bar for Souls-likes is insanely high now, and I am itching to see what this team will do next. I am very excited for their future, and I really hope even the most hardcore fanboys can open their eyes and give this Souls-like a genuine chance, because I promise it is just that good.